What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the WeSportin Podcast. And today we have a special guest, Super Bowl champion Brad Johnson, here with us today. And I got my boy OJ here. Brad, how you doing today, man?
Doing great, man. Appreciate you guys reaching out to me and finally got this worked out. So we'll have a lot of fun on here. Tell some stories.
Absolutely. So, Brad, number one, I think everyone wants to know is how you doing, man?
Doing great. I actually live in Athens, Georgia. My wife and I have been married for 23 years. We have two boys, coached them all their lives, and now they're both playing at Texas A&M. So we kind of travel back and forth between Athens and College Station, and help a lot of kids, coaching a lot of ball on the side, and just having a good time.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Brad, if you don't mind, we're just gonna run through your illustrious career. I mean, let's just go over some of it. You were drafted back in 1992 NFL draft. You were in the 9th round back then. I mean, isn't it crazy? Like now there's 7 rounds this year, but back then, I mean, how long were you waiting by that phone for that phone call? Because I know you ended your college career. I do believe it was around. You ended in the 91 season, correct?
Right.
So did you take a year off and then declare, or how did that work out?
Now, Wikipedia has it messed up a little bit. So I actually got drafted in 92, played 17 years in the NFL. There was actually 12 rounds when I got drafted. And then now there's only 7. There were only 28 teams. Now it's 32. And I was playing at Florida State. I was playing behind my best friend at that time, Casey Weldon, who's the runner-up to the Heisman. He was compared to Joe Montana. So I only started one game my senior year. And I got invited to the combine. They invite 17 guys to the combine. Then they invite 3 extra guys to be the guys that throw to tight ends and defensive backs and running backs and stuff. And when I left the combine, I tell people I thought I was the best one there. And but the problem was all the general managers and all the other owners and coaches, they didn't think so. So I just needed to be groomed and a chance to grow. I was a basketball player my whole life, and I was kind of a late bloomer in football. And but the draft happened. I thought I was going to go to the New York Giants. They said they were going to draft somebody about the 4th round. Somebody they wanted a younger guy behind Phil Simms and Jeff Hostetler, kind of that they could groom over time. And in the 4th round, they drafted Kent Graham out of Ohio State. And then in the 7th round, my dad and I, we were sitting on the dorm room at Florida State at Burt Reynolds Hall. And in the 7th round, a buddy of mine from Atlanta Falcons called. He said, Brad, if you don't get drafted, we'd like to pick you up, come in as a free agent to the Atlanta Falcons. And I told him, I said, listen, if I don't get drafted, I'm going back home to North Carolina. And I'll be a school teacher and call it a day. And then the 9th round, my name came across the ticker. And it said, I was drafted. My dad went nuts. This is the 3rd day of the draft, and then they came across the ticker about 5 minutes later. Said I was drafted, and we kind of celebrated. And I got a phone call from Denny Green, and said I was drafted the 227th pick, 9th round of the Minnesota Vikings.
That's awesome.
I do have a question for you, Brad, to kind of like back up a little bit. So you mentioned that basketball is a love for you. So what was that deciding factor into you pursuing sort of football and more of a full-time and long-term as opposed to basketball?
I was an All-American in high school in football, and I was an All-State player in basketball. But I think the All-American thing, to be honest with you, is probably more because of my potential more than my play in high school. And I scored 2,400 points in basketball. I love basketball. I played every day of my life. And so I couldn't decide what sport I wanted to play in college, to be honest with you. And on one of my recruiting visits to Georgia Tech, the guy I wanted to play for was either Dean Smith at North Carolina or Bobby Crimmins at Georgia Tech. I went to all his camps as a kid, and he brought me into his office and said, Brad, you got a scholarship here, but you can only play 5 guys. Bobby Crimmins only played 5 guys. And he said, the guy that's in your place is going to be a guy named Dennis Scott. He's an All-American, and you'll play behind him. And so Dennis Scott ended up having an 11-year career in the NBA. And but Coach Crimmins, he said, Brad, what do you think you want to where do you see your career going? I said, well, I got more potential in football, but I love basketball. And he says, well, do what's best for you in the end. And he kind of really helped me, encouraged me, because I was playing behind Dennis Scott. And then kind of my full potential as far as being a 6'5" quarterback at that time. The guy was a Vinny Testaverde, was what everybody was trying to grow into the quarterback at that era. So that's what made me choose Florida State in football And then I actually played 2 years of basketball at Florida State also, but I knew my career had to go football if I was ever going to make it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So now, Brad, obviously, when you were drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. Now, obviously, you were in a quarterback room. I would personally like to say full of legends. You were in a quarterback room with guys like Randall Cunningham and Warren Moon. How much of their knowledge of the game helped you progress as a player?
Yeah, when I first got drafted, I was behind Rich Gannon and Sean Salisbury and Wade Wilson. Wade Wilson actually became my QB coach in Dallas at my year 16 and year 17. And then I was with Jim McMahon, and then I learned, but I was still learning the game. And so really all those guys rubbed off on me in good ways, but I learned a lot from Warren Moon, just kind of the way he handled himself, the way he dealt with touchdowns, interceptions, how he dealt with talking to receivers, trying to get plays he wanted from coordinator Brian Billick, and just how he dealt with the media. And so, but all those kind of guys, they do rub off in good ways, And so for me, I was looking for opportunity, but, I kind of kept my mouth shut in the meetings, learned from those guys, and was actually, I learned along a lesson too. Like the more I pulled against the quarterback to not do well so I could play, usually they better that they did. They threw more touchdowns than we, so I sat the bench at those things. So I became a big supporter of the other quarterbacks I was always with.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Now, also now let's get the cat out of the bag. You played with probably one of the top, I would say top 10, top 15 wide receivers of all time with Randy Moss and Chris Carter, which are obviously by far. And, I know you played in Minnesota and whatnot. Now, did those guys help you at all in any way in kind of progressing, with a kind of like a quarterback wide receiver connection, or if like on Minnesota, who was your, like, I don't want to say favorite, but who was like your number one guy there that you'd love throwing the ball to?
Yeah, my favorite receiver was the guy that was always open. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but we had some great players. Jake Reed was the third receiver, and Kadri Ishmael. But I kind of had the fortunate enough to throw Chris Carter and Tim Brown their 100th touchdown pass. I threw Randy Moss's first touchdown pass, and a lot of things like that, lots of different stats like that. But Chris Carter was he was unbelievable in the slot receiver, great at catching routes on the sidelines, unbelievable hands, can move the chains, was very, very smart. The year Randy Moss came in, I only played with him 3 games. I got hurt that year, broke my ankle and broke my thumb, but he was a game changer. I mean, he was the best I think he's the best deep ball threat ever because he was fast. He could catch the ball, very, very smart, great competitor. He always told me I'm never running full speed unless Deion Sanders, Darrell Green, or Dale Carter guard me. Otherwise, I'm setting them up, and you throw as far as you can, I'll go get it, Yeah. But what you find, those guys are smart, they're tough, they love the game, and they made each other better. And Randy Moss, he probably should have been the first pick of the draft, but different circumstances. But him coming to Minnesota, being in our system, with Denny Green and Brian Billick as the play caller, is a perfect setup for him to be with those other receivers too.
That's awesome, man. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. I watched a lot of your film. I watched a lot of it in Minnesota, even your time in Washington. I don't know if you know this. I'm a huge Washington fan myself. Yeah. And in your time with Minnesota, I just, it reminded me just of Marcus Mariota, and you might know what I'm talking about. Your touchdown pass to yourself versus the Panthers. How did you keep yourself so composed in that moment, man? Because you threw it to yourself and you just dove on in there, man. It's like, how do you keep? Was that like the play call? I mean, take me back to that moment, please.
Yeah, the play was called far left spear rip Dallas. Basically, we're on the 3-yard line playing against the Carolina Panthers. It was 3rd down, 3rd and 3 on the goal line, and we dropped back, and I was throwing a stick route to the tight end, and the ball got batted up to me. Usually you'd bat the ball down because it might get intercepted. And I knew once you catch it, you can't throw it. You can't make 2 forward passes.
Right.
And then I also knew if I took a sack, we're still in field goal range. So I got it. The ball came back to me. I juked out a guy, Mike Barrow, I think, and then scrambled around, dove for the end zone, and spiked it. But when it happened, we didn't know what really took place. It was the first time it ever happened. Right. And then that night after the game, our PR guy, he called me and said, "Brad, it's the first time it's ever happened." It counted. We didn't know what it was. It counted as a touchdown pass and a touchdown catch to myself. I actually won an ESPY award, first time it ever happened.
Yeah.
And then Marcus Mariota did in the playoffs too. And it was just 12 points in fantasy football. Won an ESPY. It was a wild play looking back, and it was just kind of right place, right time.
You were impressive too as well with your movements. And I went back and I looked at the play because you juked out two guys. At first, you picked out one of the guys, you went to the left, and the second guy, you did a full like Marshall Faulk like juke and kind of outran him to the end zone. So yeah.
I was a lot younger back then. So but no, it was just a unique play. I mean, it really was. And so
right.
I mean, just it was only a 3-yard play, and if I'd been at the 4-yard line, I might have been a yard short. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just right place, right time, and pretty cool to be a part of it.
That's awesome, man. So now I know it was in the summer, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It was in the summer of the 1998, 1999, where you were traded to the Washington, what they were called the Washington Redskins.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the trade. I don't remember fully, but I believe it was a first and a third. How did that process work out for you? How did you find out? And what were your first, reactions when you got traded?
I'd been with Minnesota for 7 years. I'd just gone through a neck injury, gone through a thumb injury, gone through a broken foot. Mm-hmm. And at that time, Randall Cunningham took over the year I got hurt. Mm-hmm. He was MVP. So I was looking for a way to move on with my career at that time. And there was no animosity, nothing like that. So I was hoping there would be a trade that took place. And I was hoping at that time I'd go to Baltimore Ravens to be with Brian Billick. Mm-hmm. We'd been together for 7 years in Minnesota. Perfect system for me, perfect fit. And then, but actually the Redskins at that time, they gave up more draft picks. And so when I went there, I'm like, where, I had no clue. Norv Turner was the head coach. I was going to have to learn a whole new system.
Right.
Who are the guys on the team?
Mm-hmm.
I was having to sell my house in Minnesota, build a house in Florida where I was at. I was buying a house in Washington, learn a new playbook, recover from all these injuries. But it was a blessing in disguise. I love being a Redskin. I really do. It was a childhood dream of mine growing up in North Carolina to play for them. And that year we won the conference. And it was just, I actually loved it and played 2 years there. Loved playing for Norv Turner. Great teacher of the game, great knowledge, and made a big impact on my career.
Right. No, and I will admit, man, as a fan, I wasn't alive to watch you, but going back into the history books, I do gratefully appreciate your time there. You let us pass to we beat the Lions, I believe, and then we went on, and I think, and ironically, and I just think it's so ironic, we ended up losing to Tampa. We lost to Tampa Bay that year, I do believe.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to list off a couple names for you. And I mean, I want to just know, I guess, the experience and what you learned by being on these teams with guys like Brian Mitchell, Champ Bailey, Stephen Davis, Darrell Green, Andre Reed, Chris Samuels, Bruce Smith, LeVar Arrington, Deion Sanders. I mean, I know they were out of their prime, or, some were entering their prime like LeVar Arrington. What was it like in the circumstance of what was it like just being in the locker room with those guys?
Yeah, we had a lot of guys like that in Minnesota too when I first went there. Like, so you get used to playing with great players, and I mean, if a guy runs 4.5, you wish he ran a 4.4. If a guy was 320 pounds, man, you wish he was 330 pounds. Like, nothing's ever good enough, fast enough, big enough. But in my time, I did play with a lot of legends, a lot of great guys, a lot of guys that went on to be Hall of Famers. And at that time, you just compete with each other. It's not like you're not asking for their autograph or anything like that. I mean, you're working together, you're playing together, or you're competing against each other. So, but got respect for all those guys. Just, everywhere I went, I played with a lot of legends at some point in time, but there was a lot of great players on that Washington team. No doubt about that.
Absolutely. Now and like I said, going back and watching your film, I went back and please, if you can remember the date, December 26, 1999, you being on the Washington Redskins, you guys went up against the San Francisco 49ers, and you arguably had one of your best statistical games. I believe it was 4 TDs, 471 yards. Was there anything going through your head that game? This question is actually from one of my co-hosts. So this is kind of answering his question. What was going through your mind that game? Was there something that just made you go, man, I'm just gonna wreck the 49ers today? What was that day?
Right, it was a big game for us. It was game 15 of the season, and really, if we won that game, we actually won the division. The Redskins at that time had not won the division 8 or 9 years. So it'd been a while. So it was really just a changing of the guard. Like, we're taking over the division. And so when the yards, it just kind of happened. We had some big pass plays down the field. The game went in overtime, so you got some extra yards. And but I just remember just then wasn't even thinking about the yards, more thinking about how pivotal it was. I think we went 26-20 in overtime. I had Larry Centers in the flat, and he ran for about 40 yards for the final touchdown. I just remember everybody hugging each other and kind of going crazy in the locker room after the game. So pretty cool moment to first year in Washington to achieve what we did.
We appreciate you. I just want to let you know that we appreciate you so much for that. Now, before we move on to Tampa, your time in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, man, I just have to ask you, you and Stephen Davis, I think by looking at Stephen Davis' stats, you guys must have had a really good connection. What kind of locker room or chemistry did you guys try to build up to make sure you guys went into that 99 season just absolutely going crazy? Because Stephen Davis went off that year for around 1,400 yards, 17 TDs. And I mean, obviously, in order for a guy to do that, the quarterback wide receiver relationship has to be good. What did it take to build that kind of relationship as you were just being traded there?
Yeah, I think Norv Turner, the head coach and the play call, he was great at calling play action passes. And he had, obviously he was in Dallas at one time with Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith. And so our running game, it was Stephen Davis, he was Pro Bowler that year. He was a load, man. I mean, we beat the Baltimore Ravens that year when they won the Super Bowl. I mean, Stevens could carry he could carry the rock. And so that built a lot of we had a lot of big pass plays that year because we could run the ball. The next year he actually got hurt. We weren't able to run the ball like we wanted to run it, but he was a load. You had to put 8 guys in the box and left us one-on-one on the outside with our receivers. So team was loaded with talent, but Stephen was leading the way.
Right. So now we're gonna move on to I know this will be OJ's favorite part because he's the Bucs fan. He said he was in high school when he saw you win the Super Bowl. Now we'll move on to your time in Tampa Bay, where you won them their first ever franchise Super Bowl. Now I would love to have OJ go first. He's the fan. He watched.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So OJ, please take it away.
Yeah, my first question is this: you alluded to working with Brian Billick he eventually moved to Baltimore. So can you talk to us through sort of what was behind your mind in terms of choosing the Bucs instead of the Ravens? And I know that if I'm not mistaken, Tony Dungy was an assistant for the Vikings as well. So was that the reason, or why the Bucs and not Baltimore? Because I'm pretty sure they heavily recruited you as well.
And honestly, I told you I wanted to be traded to Baltimore at that time. And so I was hoping it'd be Baltimore. And then we kind of got talking contract wise, it was a more secure contract in Tampa. It's just more security, to be honest with you. And they could cut me. I felt like they could cut you after 1 year in Baltimore with nothing really at stake. And so I felt like there had to be more skin in the game than what I was being offered at that time. There was another team, Kansas City was involved in it too. And so I just felt like the contract was more secure in Tampa. And then the second reason was I want to be the first quarterback that ever won it in Tampa franchise history, to be honest with you. And so they'd had 3 quarterbacks to have left. Steve Young won it with the 49ers. Doug Williams won it with the Redskins. Trent Dilfer had just won it with Baltimore. So that all kind of played into it too, to be honest with you. So I felt, and then I knew Tony Dungy. I mean, obviously knowing the system in Baltimore would have been great. And an easy transition for me, but I just felt like it was going to be better for me in the long run to be with Tampa and for what I wanted contract wise and what I wanted to achieve personally. And so I'd had Tony Dungy for 3 years as a defense coordinator in Minnesota. I'd played against Tampa a bunch, knew a bunch of the guys on the team. So it was that was an easy transition too.
Yeah. And so, Nico, I don't know if you're aware. So back then, I think it was called the NFC Central. I believe we had 5 teams in a division. The Bucs played with the division was with the Packers, pretty much the NFC North with the addition of Tampa. So it was crazy then. So, and I remember as a kid watching the games. For some reason, whenever the Bucs play the Packers, I kid you not, Brett Favre would always throw 2 picks against that Tampa 2 defense. So I guess my next question for you is this: I became a Bucs fan officially in 1999, and when I became a Bucs fan, the quarterback at the time was Sean King. And I remember the Bucs always had volatility at that quarterback position. And that was literally the last piece, to winning a Super Bowl. So talk us through what it meant for you to get traded to the Bucs. And once you got here to Tampa, what were your thoughts? Did you think this was viable, like a championship viable team, or what was going through your mind in terms of the potential of this team?
I thought it was a really, really good team. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone there.
Mhm.
Obviously, they were known for a great defense.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I felt like there needed to be more upgrades that took place.
Mhm.
My first year there, we were 9-7. I felt like we overachieved to be 9-7, to be honest with you. And so the next year, you kind of saw it when Gruden came in. The next year, he made a bunch of moves. He brought in tight ends Ken Dilger and Ricky Dudley, and receivers Kenny McCardell and Joe Jaravicius and Robin Oben and Kerry Jenkins and left guard, and then Michael Pittman at tailback. So we made a lot of moves. You saw that with Tampa 2 years ago when they won it when Tom Brady came there, and you saw it with the Rams this past year. I don't think you can buy teams. I think it's got to be the right kind of guys, right fit. And that's kind of what we upgraded. Eventually, it kind of got to that point. And so thought we were good. We were a playoff team when I first got there, but we were, upgrade-wise, we were better when we actually won it.
Yeah. So in that same vein, then, can you talk us through sort of the differences scheme-wise with Tony Dungy and John Gruden? Or is it more so John Gruden was more offensive-oriented? Was that, to you, the biggest difference in terms of the offense from your first year to the second year we went to the Super Bowl?
I thought they're both great coaches. Tony's obviously Hall of Fame coach, won a Super Bowl with the Colts, and every word he says is gold. So love playing for Tony. Obviously, it's probably more of a defensive-minded team because if there's a pay scale, and probably more of the money was on that defensive side than there was the offense, honestly. And so when John came in, he's an offensive guy, and then he made all those moves probably in free agency, probably more on the offensive side, the guys that I named. So that was, and then it was just it worked out great for Tony when he moved on, and then he made the Colts a Super Bowl champion. Then Gruden took what we had and kind of upgraded and made us Super Bowl champions too. Yeah, but great. It was awesome to play for both of them. Like, it was just total respect for both of them. Loved it for both of them.
So now the meat and potatoes of Super Bowl. Talk to us about what it meant for you both as a player and for you as a person, Brad Johnson, as an individual, and sort of that accomplishment, like the culmination of all the dreams and goals that you have. And then the follow-up question to that is, after the Bucs won the Super Bowl, did you think that the Bucs had a legitimate chance at repeating?
Yep. It's a great question. Yes, both of them. So, number one, I'd never won at my last game of my season ever. Didn't win a state championship in high school. Didn't win a national championship in college. Was part of a lot of great teams. Had been in the NFL for 10 years. Been to playoffs like 8 out of 10 years, and got beat the first round of those 8 years. 7 out of those 8 playoff seasons. So it's just hard to do it when it's time. But when Gruden came in, I remember he said, "Brad, we're going to win it this year. You got to believe me. We got the right people, right players." And it was competition practice every day, offense versus defense. And we didn't look ahead at the Super Bowl. We were kind of looking at day to day, the daily grind of OTAs and training camps and just weekly being prepared. So when we got to the season, when we won it, I think it was just the belief that I felt like Gruden gave in me that we could win it. The belief that we and not making it bigger than what it was. Like it's a hard thing to say, but like you just got to win that day. Just win that day, and not make it a monumental moment where it's overwhelming to play in that particular game. And so when we did win it, it was looking back at it, when if you ask guys that have won it, they'll tell you. Guys that have lost it, they may say, "Well, the game is it's a big party. It's been overhyped." But the guys that have won it, they'll tell you, "You know what? It's one of the best days of their life," because it is a dream come true to achieve it. And it takes we had so many great coaches on that staff too. Mike Tomlin, who won it with Pittsburgh, and Rod Marinelli and Rich Versace, and a bunch of other coaches went on to be head coaches or coordinators or whatever they became. And so it's an incredible moment for all of us, because no person on that team, coach or player, to ever won a ring. So we all did it together. And then going back to trying to repeat, I felt like we had a great off season. Felt we had a great training camp. We won our first game against Philadelphia on Monday night, 17-0. And then I felt like we were ready to take off. But that year, we had 7 guys lost to injury. that couldn't play during the regular season.
Mhm.
And then we lost 2 or 3 close games. Like there's one game, all we needed to do, kick an extra point with no time left on the clock, and it got blocked. And it got beaten overtime. Then we had the 35-14 game with the Colts, and with 4 minutes to go in the game, we got beat. Like we had some weird things happen.
That was Tony Dungy's birthday. I remember that game vividly. I don't think any game hurt me. Honestly, it took me like 3 months to get over it. And it was so bittersweet because it happened on Tony Dungy's birthday, and I was so happy for him. So I was so conflicted. But that game hurt.
So we just had a lot of weird things happen like that. But without the players, like you didn't have the ammunition to win a lot of those games. So I think that's what really took place.
So Brad, I have a couple of questions myself about your time in Tampa too. Now, obviously, going back, this was the regular season of the year that you guys went to the Super Bowl. It was the time that you guys played the Eagles. I do remember this because I watched the Tampa Bay 2002 documentary on you guys and how you guys as a team just kind of pushed at week in and week out going in. Now, when you guys, you have to remind me because I don't remember personally, and I don't know.
It's been a while.
Who was the player that got injured that day for you guys that the Eagles fans celebrated? And I remember, because I remember Derek Brooks was mic'd up saying, they're celebrating the injury, but we'll be back. Do you by any chance remember who it was?
I don't. We played them early in the season in October, and they beat us. It just wasn't a very good game.
Yeah.
I remember I cracked my ribs. I was out for the next week or two.
Yeah, I think it was. No.
I don't remember. Someone else hurt that day.
I guess my follow-up question, would be to that is, did you have a chip on your shoulder going into that NFC championship? Because I think it was to beat the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. Did you guys have a chip on your shoulder? Because I don't know what the timeline is or whatnot, but I know that Philly's beaten Tampa Bay 4 consecutive times previously before that.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a chip on your shoulder going into that game saying, I want to crush these guys? Because I know you played in Washington, so you know that NFC East rivalry, those teams chip back and forth. Did you go into that game saying, I want to not only beat the Eagles, I want to obliterate the Eagles? What was your thought process in that NFC title?
They were our nemesis. They'd beaten us the last couple of years in the playoffs. They beat us in the regular season. They beat us 2010, I think, in the regular season, but it felt like it was 55-2. And just hard to get a first down, hard to score. And we knew if we were going to win it was going to have to go through Philly. And so when we went up there, the Bucs had never won a game in under 40 degrees, playing on the road, the NFC Championship team that had beaten us before. Last game at the Vet, everything was kind of stacking against us.
Right.
And I remember Gruden the night before, he said, listen, guys, something might bad happen early in the game, but don't panic. And so when the opening kickoff, they ran it back to our 20-yard line. Second play of the game, they ran a touchdown. Like, we're down 7-0. It's 20 degrees. I'm like, it's going to be a long day. And but we kind of got going. We had a play called triple left 83 double smash. X option hit Joe Jaravicius over the middle. He took it 73 yards down the sidelines. It gave us momentum. And we went ahead in the game. Then kind of just were in control of the game. And then Rodney Barber intercepted one at the very end to seal the deal. But that was more like our Super Bowl than any other game. The team that had our number, playing in the cold, shutting down the Vet. A lot of great respect for Philly just because it had so many games with them in the past. And they went to 4 NFC championship games, and they never won it, but you could tell just a lot of great players on their team.
So Brad, real quick, man, before we let you go, man, because this has been an amazing conversation that we've had so far. And just real quick, now, obviously we know that the draft is coming up next week. And obviously I feel like asking for like a comparison or whatnot, what player in our modern day do you see yourself in one of these modern day players that you're seeing now? Obviously, the league's changing in various ways, but who do you see yourself in? And maybe in this draft or former drafts, what guy do you see in yourself?
The 2 guys that I've always liked, the one that's still playing, that's an older guy, is Matt Ryan. If you look at him, he's throwing for 60,000 yards. He'll make the Hall of Fame. I should have won a Super Bowl. I feel like our game was very similar. Obviously, he's had a much, much better career than I've had, but and the longevity he's had. But the guy that's very similar, when I look, not this year's draft, but I said this last year, of all the quarterbacks that came out last year, and they're evaluating all these guys, and I watched all their pro days. And the guy that I liked the most of all the guys last year was a guy named Davis Mills. out of Stanford. And he only played 11 games in college. He coming off an ACL tear. But I said, listen, his pro day was the best day. Like, he played the pro style game. Now,
Right.
He went to Houston. They're down in numbers and as far as, talent to compete for trying to win a division. But if you go back and look at the way he played, I think it's pretty awesome to give a testament to a rookie that only played 11 games in college to do what he did, just to kind of watch those kind of guys have success. So it'll be interesting how the draft goes this year. So we'll see.
Yeah. So OJ, if you have any last words to say real quick before we end it off today?
Yeah, I'll just say this personally, Brad. You're honestly my favorite Bucks quarterback of all time, and I know a lot of people watching this are gonna say, "No, it's Tom Brady." To me, Tom Brady's more of a Patriot than he is a Buccaneer, because you gave that quarterback position legitimacy for me. So and I still live in Tampa, like till this day, and so I'll always be a Bucks fan. And it's amazing sitting here, and I'm trying to contain myself not to smile so much, but thank you for being a great person and for playing for the Bucks and giving me the opportunity to watch all those years. And from one fan to you, I appreciate it. And thank you for this interview as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, OJ. Thanks, man. And I love my time down there in Tampa, and I get back down there quite a bit for some reunions. It's actually our 20-year reunion this year, so looking forward to get back to getting together with a lot of those guys. So I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
That's awesome. Hey, Brad, thank you so much, man. If you guys want to find Brad on TikTok, I'm gonna leave everything down below for you guys to go watch his, the trick shots and everything. And Brad, man, like I said, I thank you so much for the opportunity to meet you. It's an honor to even be sitting here talking to you, man. It feels so unreal. Like I feel like the fanboy moment's gonna come out. I'm waiting for. I don't even care at this point.
Yeah.
But seriously, thank you for what you did for Tampa Bay. Thank you for your time in Washington. We, as Washington fans, we don't get a lot of good luck, in the last couple of years. So you're a very amazing piece to us in our history. So we thank you. And Brad, I really do hope we can see you on here again soon. It's been an honor talking to you, man. Really.
Always.
All right.
Yep. I appreciate you reaching out. We'll have fun, man. Thank you.
All right, I will. Thank you guys all for watching today, and I'll see you guys next time.